need of certain Western weapons, especially air defense systems, and we are grateful for everything that your countries provide us. We rely on continuous support. However, today, Ukraine is already a key contributor to European and transatlantic security. We are no longer a country just seeking protection under the NATO umbrella. For more than 11 years, we have been effectively deterring aggressive Russia, which poses the biggest threat to NATO security. Your continued investment in the Ukrainian defense industry is an investment in your own and transatlantic security. It is an investment in the most modern and effective European security shield. For us, our strength is an existential choice in favor of peace, justice, and freedom. Dear allies, NATO needs Ukraine as much as Ukraine needs NATO. Ukraine can strengthen NATO with our 110 brigades with daily combat experience. This is currently the largest, most combat-ready land army in Europe. And I'm confident that as a NATO member, Ukraine would make the ready land army in Europe. And I'm confident that as a NATO member, Ukraine would make the alliance much more stronger. And we would share the collective defense burden very effectively. Today, we may still be working to get a full consensus in the alliance on the timeline of when Ukraine will become a NATO member. But the open door policy is one of the pillars of NATO's strengths. This policy is an effective instrument to deter Russia strategically. Neither Russia nor any other third state has any veto right over the alliance decisions. Furthermore, a country that poses an existential threat to NATO and its members cannot have any influence on the decision-making process. We consider it is very important for Ukraine to be represented at the Hague summit and be part of its success, both in the form of personal presence of Volodymyr Zelensky and in the summit's strong decisions. We all want to send the right signals of unity, strength, and resilience. And this will bring peace closer and strengthen global security architecture. A just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in Ukraine is its precondition and cornerstone. Dear partners, real peace needs strength, joint American and European strengths. I am proud to remind you that already at the time of the Dayton process, Ukraine made its strong contribution to peace in Europe. With our own boots on the ground, a very professional and dedicated military contingent in Bosnia and Herzegovina and then Kosovo. In July 1995, Ukrainian peace contingent saved thousands of people in the village of Zhepa. Our soldiers stood firmly for peace and the lives of civilians under the threat of being killed. 4 months later, the Dayton Peace Accords were signed to end the bloody war and bring back peace to Europe. Dear friends, we are now just a month before the crucial NATO summit in The Hague. So let's make sure that the summit and its agenda is tuned accordingly to key security challenges we need to address. Let's make sure that we are united, committed, and ready to act. That's why I am happy that the NATO Secretary General is with us today. Dear Mark, thank you for your work and engagement. We all rely on you. I want to thank you, Sir Alec Shelbrook, the Vice President of the Assembly, and the President Marcos Perestrello for initiating and supporting the very strong declaration, Peace Through Strength in Ukraine. It is important that the declaration be adopted today and its contents implemented. There is no more time to delay. Let's act together. Thank you for your attention.
Minister Sybiha, we thank you for your remarks and to assure you that the NATO Parliamentary Assembly remains fully squarely behind supporting Ukraine for a safe, long-lasting and just peace. Thank you.
Okay, dear colleagues, it's now time to welcome the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte.
Thank you, Marcos, and also thank you, Andrii, for your incredible leadership in Ukraine. And I think it was very important to have that address today to this important gathering. And thank you to Mike Turner and the whole US team for the warm welcome to Dayton. First, I want to pay tribute to Gerry Connolly. He was a powerful advocate for our great alliance, a champion of the transatlantic bond, and a fearless defender of the democratic values we hold dear. We met a couple of times, first when I was Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and then twice in my present role. And I have the best of memories of these encounters. And I can tell you, also in private, he could be very forceful. Let us honor his memory by continuing to stand strong and united in NATO. Despite these sad circumstances, it is a pleasure to join you this session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and to celebrate your 70th anniversary, 70th, 70. The MPA promotes peace, security and democracy, strengthens transatlantic cooperation and builds understanding about our great alliance. You reinforce the bond between NATO and our democratic societies. You have my admiration and deepest thanks. I'm so pleased that we are meeting in Dayton, a great city in the great state of Ohio. And I was delighted to learn about the Dayton Dutch Lions, a local football team, or I suppose you in the United States would say soccer. The Dutch philosophy for the beautiful game is all about strategic thinking, adaptability and strong teamwork. Today, I want to share with you how we are going to build a better NATO. At the summit in The Hague next month, Allied leaders will take decisions to make NATO a stronger, fairer and more lethal alliance. Because we live in a more dangerous world, and this is a critical moment for our security, with multiple threats and challenges. There is Russia's brutal war against Ukraine, the threat of terrorism, intense global competition, and flashpoints around the world, from the Middle East to Asia. Russia has teamed up with China, North Korea and Iran. They are expanding their militaries and their capabilities. They are preparing for long-term confrontation. I'm struck by the speech Winston Churchill made in the House of Commons in 1936, when he asked the question, will there be time to put our defences in order? Will there be time to make these necessary efforts? Or will the awful words, too late, be recorded? Peace fails when there's complacency, when threats go unanswered, and when preparations are put off. We must take action now and build up our defences. To delay is dangerous. To make NATO stronger, we must increase defence spending. That underpins everything. Allies will have to invest much more to meet new capability targets, which NATO defence ministers will agree in Brussels next week. We need more resources, forces and capabilities so that we are prepared to face any threat and to implement our collective defense plans in full. Most allies, if not all, are due to reach the initial aim of spending 2% of GDP on defense this year. And many have already announced plans to go much further. We know that the 2% pledge, agreed way back in 2014, just doesn't cut it anymore. So, in 2025, we are finalizing a plan to dramatically increase defense spending across the alliance. This plan will mean more money for our core military requirements, hard defense, and more money for defense-related investments, including infrastructure and resilience. I'm working closely with allied leaders as we prepare for the formal decisions at the summit in The Hague. As parliamentarians, I need your help to make the case for higher defense spending with the public and to encourage your governments to keep up with their commitments. And I know the debates about investing more in defense will be difficult in some parliaments. And each of you will have an important role in building support to get budgets approved. So I need, and NATO needs, your support. As well as more defense spending, we need more defense production. NATO's aim is to enhance and expand the industrial base right across the alliance. We are committed to increasing defense production, fostering innovation, and removing barriers to cooperation. The summit in The Hague will send a clear demand signal to industry. And we need industry to meet our ambition. Increased defense production is not just good for our security. It is good for our economies too. And I also expect allies will spend more and better together on critical capabilities for our armed forces. NATO must become stronger, fairer and more lethal. To make NATO fairer, we will rebalance the burden of our security, with all allies contributing their fair share. We all benefit enormously from the protection our transatlantic alliance provides. But it is vital that every member of this alliance is pulling their weight. And I'm encouraged to see Europe and Canada stepping up with more defense spending. A strong transatlantic alliance is good for Europe and good for the United States. Becoming more lethal means strengthening our deterrence and defense posture and providing our militaries with what they need to keep us safe, so that no potential aggressor has any doubt about our resolve. Rest assured, we will always be a defensive alliance. But to protect our way of life, we will always do whatever it takes to prevent any aggression against us. And if anyone dares to attack us, our resolve will be absolute. To preserve peace, we must prepare for war. Let us not ignore the lessons of history. Dayton knows that peace can prevail. It was here in 1995 that the brutal Bosnian War was brought to an end. The Dayton Agreement laid the foundation for peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. NATO has supported peace and stability there and right across the Western Balkans for 30 years. Our commitment remains just as strong today. But above all, it is the people and politicians of Bosnia and Herzegovina and throughout the region that must deliver progress. The Western Balkans has shown that peace is possible. But today, Europe is not at peace. Russia has brought war back to Europe. Its aggression against Ukraine must stop, and it must stop now. I completely condemn Russia's indiscriminate attacks against innocent civilians over the last 48 hours. We fully support President Trump's urgent efforts to stop the fighting. We need a just and lasting peace. This is a priority that we all share. Thank you. NATO will continue our long-term support to Ukraine. And this is not about prolonging the war, it is about ensuring Ukraine can defend itself now and prevent any future aggression. NATO's command in Germany is leading the coordination of security assistance and training for Ukraine, delivering critical aid daily and helping build its future force. And our new center in Poland is helping us all learn the lessons from the war. So far, allies pledged more than 20 billion euros in additional security assistance for Ukraine this year. And through the coalition of the willing, led by the United Kingdom and France, NATO allies have shown they are ready, willing and able to take more responsibility to help secure peace when the time comes. NATO has stood with Ukraine from the beginning. We stand with Ukraine today, and we will stand with Ukraine throughout the challenges ahead. We know that even when the war against Ukraine ends, the threats we face will persist. Our adversaries will still try to dominate and divide us. They will fail because of the unbreakable transatlantic bond, North America and Europe standing together to secure peace through strength. A stronger, fairer and more lethal alliance is how we stay safe in a more dangerous world. 1 billion people on both sides of the Atlantic are counting on us. Let us rise to the challenge and stand stronger together in NATO. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. We now come to questions. Thank you for being here with us and take some time. I must warn you that we already have a large number of questions, several dozens of them. It is highly unlikely that we will be able to go through all of them, but we'll do our best. I will set a 1 minute time limit for questions. I will ask you to respect this limit so that we can get more questions. We will follow our usual procedure. We will join groups of 3 questions, and we will start immediately with the question for Michael Turner, the head of the American delegation. Please, Mike, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for being here. It's important that you interface with the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. The legislative function is important as we look to NATO's policies. They have to be adopted, both budgets and policies in the legislature. So thank you for honoring us by being here. You've recently made a statement about Russia's efforts to put a nuclear anti-satellite weapon into space. I believe that weapon should never be permitted to go into space. This is, I think, the Cuban Missile Crisis in space. Your bringing attention to it is incredibly important. It would destabilize, I think, all of our efforts, both militarily and commercial satellites in space. It would, if it was detonated, wipe out low Earth orbit, perhaps up to a year. It has been testified before the U.S. Congress. Thank you for bringing the attention to that. I think collectively as an alliance we need to make this a priority. I'd love your additional thoughts on that.
Now, please, Mikko Savola, Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. And thank you for your leadership. Right now, NATO and particularly its European pillar is addressing the right priorities. We must strengthen Ukraine's and Europe's defense, ramp up our defense industry and train more troops. We must spend more on defense and take greater responsibility for our own security. We must also correct the past mistakes. That's why Finland is withdrawing from the Ottawa Convention, and we have heard similar voices from Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania and Poland. In a wartime situation, we must have every tool available to stop an enemy coming from the east. But my question to you, Mr. Secretary General, concerns the reinforcement of the NATO's eastern flank. What plans does NATO have to strengthen the entire eastern border of Europe, and how will the alliance ensure that the European countries remain committed to increasing their defense capabilities in line with NATO's objectives?
Thank you, Mikko. And the final question of this group, Agnes Vadai from Hungary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Fake news and malign influence on our societies and citizens from our adversaries have become more and more intensive in recent months. Their aim is very clear: to undermine the basic and shared values of our liberal democracies. Our great and beloved friend, the late Jerry Connolly, proposed to set up a Centre for Democratic Resilience. Up until this centre is established in NATO HQ, which we hope is going to happen very soon, what toolkit does NATO can offer to member states and the citizens of NATO to protect themselves and our commonly shared values from these attacks? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that first round of 3 questions. So, to Mike Turner, I will absolutely keep on pressing that point. I think it is extremely relevant. It is also about weaponizing beyond, almost literally beyond our borders. And we have to also be aware collectively of the impact it would have strategically on all of us in NATO, but of course also beyond. So this is even bigger than our alliance. So you can count on me that I will keep on pressing that point. And thank you so much for your leadership and also for making clear that this is also of importance to the United States and to you personally. When it comes to the eastern flank, obviously, and this is to Mikko's question from Finland, clearly we have to do more there. First of all, we have to make sure that our 8 forward land forces are fully staffed and equipped, and of course a 9th in Finland, hopefully we will have soon, and then we will have next to Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary and Slovakia, and of course Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia and Poland, we would have our 9th forward land force. That would be very important. So one is to make sure they are fully staffed, etc. We know that Germany has now built up its presence in Lithuania, is building up its presence in Lithuania to a full brigade level, so that is very positive. But there's more to this, because at the same time, these 9 countries, of course, and all of us, all 32, but also these 9 countries on the, who are basically on the eastern flank, they are rapidly building up their own armed forces. We know that at this moment in the 3 Baltic countries and Poland have committed to defense spending close to, and in some cases even over 5%. And this is the hard defense spending they're talking about. That means that we will have more forces, more ready at the level we need them from these countries themselves as a first line of defense. So that's the second layer. The third layer is that we have to make sure that when it comes to all the strategic plans in NATO, that whenever Putin would try something silly, like attacking a part of NATO territory, he has to understand that our reaction will be devastating. And to be devastating, it means that we have to be able to implement and make happen all the plans we have, including all the backup plans, etc., etc. And that is why 8 countries now committing to 2% this year, 6, 7 already there. I think we will all have all 8 countries who were not yet at 2% this year. And then, of course, agreeing in The Hague to a new target for hard defense spending, which will be considerably north of 2%. I would think the hard spending even north of 3%. And then committing to the defense-related spending, as I mentioned. This is the third layer, to make sure that we have all our plans staffed and capable and able and trained, so that whenever something happens, we are able to defend the eastern flank. And then finally, to all the others in the room, I still hear in NATO, and here you can help, from countries who are not in the eastern flank, yes, but we are not at the eastern flank. So for us it is less relevant. The difference between Finland and a country like, let's say, Spain or Italy or the Netherlands or the United Kingdom, we are all on the eastern flank, because with the latest missile technology out of Russia, the difference is 5 minutes for these latest missiles to come to us with 5 times the sound of speed, and still very difficult to be taken out by our existing anti-missile defense system. So let's not kid ourselves. All of us, all 32, we are on the eastern flank. Not only Finland and the other 8 countries. No, we all are basically geographically located on the eastern flank. We really have to get that mentality ingrained in NATO. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Agnes is complaining.
Agnes, sorry. Of course. Well, you know, when it comes to this initiative by Jerry, and when I mentioned that he could be quite forceful, also in one-on-ones, this was one of the subjects we discussed. As you know, allies have not reached consensus on the proposal, so that's just a fact. But you also know that democracy, rule of law, individual liberty, they are the core values at the heart of NATO. And that means that NATO policies are informed by these principles. This is what differentiates us, stands us apart from Russia, from China, from North Korea, from Iran, and from other countries who want to harm us. And of course, NATO already has, luckily, existing structures for allies to uphold these core principles. But when it comes concretely, as you know, to the center, there we have to, as a statement of fact, come to the conclusion that there is no consensus. But thank you for the question, and let's collectively keep on working on these principles.
Thank you, Mark. We have now another set of 3 questions from Fernando Gutierrez from Spain, Derek Twig from the UK, and Natalia Poussiret from France. Fernando, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for your remarks. I'm here. Sorry, thank you. In the European Union White Paper for Defence, the Union establishes a set of priorities in capability gaps to be covered that start by the air defence, long-range ammunition, long-range artillery, ammunition and missiles, drones and anti-drones, etc. However, several EU member states that they are as well NATO members prefer to put the effort in different capabilities such more based in new technologies such as cyber defense, space-based intelligence or command and control. First question is, do you agree with the European Union set of priorities in the order it's established in that paper? And second, in this diversity of approaches from different countries, which should be, in your opinion, the limit to that diversity, or in other words, how we should harmonize these approaches in order to be efficient and credible in terms of defense and deterrence? Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Derek Twig from the UK.
Thank you very much. I think it'd just be useful to hear more from the Secretary-General on what will count as a successful NATO summit next month. But my specific question is, can he say more on what he believes are the further
Derek, please raise your hand so that there is, you see now, it's right in front of you.
Okay, start again. Good morning. I would be interested to hear from the Secretary-General about what he thinks will count as a successful NATO summit next month. But my specific question is, can you say more on what you believe are the further concrete steps we need to take to accelerate the growth of our defence industrial base, including how NATO countries can better cooperate to increase interoperability?
Thank you. Natalia Poussiret, France, s'il vous plaît.
Merci. I will speak in French, so please use your headset.
NATO Secretary General, today Ukraine's army is fighting for the security of its country and its people. Tomorrow, Ukraine's army will remain a shield against Russia and make a key contribution to Euro-Atlantic collective security. assuming Ukraine will not be demilitarized, what are the guarantees that NATO want to provide to rebuilding the Ukrainian army? To what extent can we trust that there will be support for maintenance and logistics? How will the Allies continue to support bolstering the Ukrainian army in the long term? Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. So let me start then with the question from Spain, Fernando Gutierrez. And here I think sometimes things are easy, sometimes. Because in NATO we have, and this was established some time ago and really reinforced by my predecessor, Jens Stoltenberg, we have this system of the NATO defense planning process, and we will, at the 5th of June, when we have our defense ministers meeting, agree on the capability targets. And all allies already on an individual basis have said we agree with the targets we have basically been exposed to. And indeed, you mentioned already some that will mean more maneuverable land formations, long-range missiles, air defense systems, logistics, and obviously ammunition, refilling our stockpiles. And this will help us because from the capability targets, we can assess the gaps immediately. Sometimes the gaps are there because many countries were not at 2%, but even the countries at 2% will have a gap to reach the capability targets, and that will inform us to a large part what has to be the new defense spending target. And this is why I assume that in The Hague we will agree on a hard defense spend target of in total 5%. Sorry, I would not mention that, but at least I did it now. But let's say that it's 5%. But I will not say what is the individual breakup, but it will be considerably north of 3% when it comes to the hard spend. And it will be also a target on defense-related spending. We need this because otherwise we can never, ever reach the capability targets we have to reach. And then there is the distinction between us and the European Union. The European Union, and we are working very closely together with Ursula von der Leyen, with Kaja Kallas, with Commissioner Kubilius, but also with Roberta Metsola, who was here. I just met her in the airport last night, here at this NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and of course with Antonio Costa. So we are really working together as one, where the EU is focusing very much on all the issues to do with the internal market, getting the defense industrial base going, making sure that the 27 work together. And here we have to particularly make sure that whatever the EU is doing is also as much as possible accessible for countries like Norway, the United Kingdom, Turkey, but also the United States, Canada and other NATO allies not in the European Union. So there is a clear distinction, a clear division of labor between the EU and NATO. We all realize this, and of course it helps that Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the Commission, was herself a defense minister in Germany before. So everyone's saying that the new defense spending targets have to be anchored in facts and reality is right, and we will do that because it will all flow from one, the capability targets being agreed by the defense ministers, therefore an assessment of the gaps. Second, this realization that we have to equalize with our biggest ally, the United States. They are totally committed to NATO, but have also this expectation that we will equalize in terms of the overall defense spending. And thirdly, the realization that Russia is reconstituting itself at a pace which is staggering. When you look at some of the open sources out of our intelligence services, we see in the media from Germany, from other countries, some will say in 3 years they are able to attack us, some are saying in 5 years, others say in 7 years. So somewhere between 3 and 7 years we have to be ready. We are able to defend ourselves now, but we also have to be able to defend ourselves between 3 and 7 years from now. So thank you for that question, and it is really important. In Wales in 2014, the 2% was a bit like this. Let's do 2%. The new hard defense target and the overall defense spending target when it comes to the hard spend and the defense-related spend has to be anchored in facts, and it will be the equalization, the build-up of Russia, but first and foremost the capability targets we will agree. Then on the question from the United Kingdom, from Dirk, on a successful NATO summit. One, agreeing the spending. This is really absolutely goal number one. It will project a NATO which is reinvigorated, which is standing proud at the world stage, which is able to defend itself now and in the future. And with the biggest ally knowing that the Europeans and Canada will spend what they are spending in terms of the overall money involved. And that's, I think, crucial for our, to be a fair alliance, so to say, also going forward. Secondly, it has to be about, as you said, about the defense industry. The problem is our defense industry is that we have fantastic companies, but they are not really producing nearly enough what we need. Particularly in ammunition, we are now producing in a year what Russia is producing in 3 months. And we is NATO. And NATO is including the US. That is a 50 trillion economy. The US and all the other 31 allies coupled together, a 50 trillion economy. Russia has only 2 trillion, so 25 times smaller. And they produce 4 times more in ammunition than we are producing. This is completely unsustainable. We cannot defend ourselves if we would not develop at a huge speed our defense industrial base. So this will be the second big outcome of The Hague. And of course, Ukraine, very important, making sure, depending on where we are in 4 weeks with Ukraine, that we will do whatever is necessary to keep them in the fight and to bring Ukraine to a lasting and durable peace. But on this defense industrial question, I mean, this is really the thing which is keeping me awake at night. I think we will get to the new defense target. I think we will get it because there is large-scale support. But when it comes to defense industry, this is the hard part. We have to get this going. If not, we lack a serious part of our overall deterrence against the Russians, Iran, North Korea and China. China is now rapidly ramping up its defense spending and production. They have now more ships sailing than the US. They will have by the end of the decade 1,000 nuclear warheads. So please make sure, and all of you can help here. We have fantastic defense industrial companies, but they have to put in the extra production lines, they have to put in the extra shifts. They will always ask for 10-year contracts. We cannot deliver them. Look at the US system. The US system works from year to year. Most European countries work from election cycle to election cycle. But they will know by the 5th of June the targets. They will know by the end of June the money available. So they are businessmen and women. Make them, please help them to make the necessary investments and to keep us safe. And then on Ukraine, this is really important, because NSETU, the command in Wiesbaden, was set up not only to help Ukraine now to have the best packaging of all the defense industrial support they are getting from allies, but also longer term to make sure that we build up the Ukrainian armed forces as a first layer of defense going forward after a potential long-term ceasefire slash a peace deal. Let's hope we will get there as soon as possible. But then we have to make sure there's a first layer there ready to do that. And of course, then we have other initiatives. I mentioned the French-British initiative, the Coalition of the Willing. There are other initiatives to make sure that next, let's say, on top of the Ukrainian armed forces themselves, we collectively will support Ukraine after a peace deal to make sure that there is no repeat of Minsk. That Putin will never ever try again to capture 1 square kilometer, 1 square mile of Ukraine. But the first layer of this, exactly to your point, is building up the Ukrainian armed forces.
Thank you. We have a new set of 3 questions from Lorenzo Cesa from Italy, Maia Lisa Follers from Germany, and Hugo Patricio Oliveira from Portugal. Lorenzo, please.
Grazie Presidente. I speak in Italian. No? Ecco. Grazie.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Thank you for the very hard job you have been carrying out. The Italian delegation asked to insert in the draft declaration a paragraph to draw attention at the Hague Summit on the need to improve understanding, our people's understanding about the scope, about the goals, the values, the policies and priorities of the alliance, and this is very much needed in order to counter disinformation which depicts NATO as an offensive alliance. We know this is not the case. We are a tool for peace. This is important, and not just for the countries which want to join NATO. Their public opinions don't know exactly what the real nature of NATO is. I would like to know what the Secretary General, the Secretariat General does in general in this regard. We have to work together. We are parliamentarians, so the relationship with parliamentarians is essential, and we can give a hand in order to explain what NATO's reasons are.
Lisa Wohlers from Germany.
Dear Mr. President, dear Secretary General, thank you for joining us. I'm over here. Here. What is your concrete vision for burden shifting to a more European-led NATO? How can US and European allies, legitimate but seemingly contradictory interests be balanced and a suitable compromise be found? Can this be achieved within ongoing NATO processes?
Danke. Hugo Patricio Oliveira, Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Secretary General, thank you for your remarks. My question is related to NATO Southern Neighborhood. In the run-up to the Hague Summit, how do you assess the development of NATO Southern Neighborhood Action Plan for the South? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And first of all, to the question of Lorenzo Chiesa. Of course, this is essential. This is about not letting ourselves being diverted and distracted by what others think we are. We are a defensive alliance. We know that to prevent war, we have to spend more. And we know that to prevent war, we have to prepare for war. That doesn't mean that we are an offensive alliance. No, we are a defensive alliance. There's nobody in NATO who wants to attack any other country. There's absolutely no interest of doing that. And it was the Russian Federation under its current leader, whatever you call him, Vladimir Putin, who has decided to invade Ukraine and to have this increasingly belligerent rhetoric against NATO, and working together with North Korea. And we know that North Korea is getting a lot of technology in return for their support for Russia's war in Ukraine. We know that China is a key enabler of that war by delivering dual-use goods, sanctions circumvention, and what more. And we know, of course, that Iran is involved, and Iran gets money from the Russians, and they use that money to stir up divisions in the Middle East. So these four are working together. We should not be naive about it, but we are a defensive alliance. We are the strongest defense alliance in world history. And we have to make sure by the decisions we make in The Hague for the long term, the next 25 years, we will stay the strongest defense alliance in world history. And that's our collective endeavor over the next 4 weeks, but also beyond the Hague Summit to implement everything, particularly, as I said before, to the UK question on defense industrial production. So I need your help, but we also should stay a little bit cool under this and a bit like the British Queen. Keep calm and carry on, even when some of our adversaries are giving all these signals that we would be offensive. We are not. That's absolutely clear. Then on the burden shifting, to Maria Lisa Vuller's question, here, of course, this is already happening. Let's first start by acknowledging that the United States is not only involved in NATO for historical reasons. The United States realizes that to stay safe, they need a secure Atlantic, they need a secure Arctic, and they need a secure Europe. That is of a vital, direct interest to the defense and security of this country long term. So that's why we work together. Of course, there was a mistake, you could say, after the First World War, and we know the famous speech Churchill delivered here in the United States, Christmas '41, a couple of weeks after Pearl Harbor, where he basically said in a very subtle way, let's not repeat that mistake of getting disengaged from Europe, because a long arm of history will then reach out again to the new world to come to the defense of the old. So there's that reason. But again, when it comes to the long-term security of the US, it is a secure Atlantic, Arctic and Europe. So there is an absolute mutual interest to do this. But we also know that the US, being the biggest power in the world and being the biggest economy in the world has more issues to think of than only the Euro-Atlantic theater. And that's why the burden shifting is taking place, and rightly so. At this moment, the US is about delivering 44% of all the capabilities of NATO. That will come down by 2032 to 30%. And that means that the non-US allies are stepping up from 56% to 70%. And then with the extra money spent, we can take over more of that if necessary, because we know that the US gradually will want to pivot more towards Asia, etc. But still keeping a very large conventional presence in Europe. So I'm pretty confident that we can do this. I have very good discussions with Pete Hegseth in the Pentagon, with Marco Rubio, with President Trump. And I'm really confident that over the next month and the next 9 months, 12 months, we will really be able to steer this whole process, spending more, making sure we stay together as an alliance, but also enabling the US to pivot more towards other problems they have to attend to, which is basically only logical. And then on the southern neighborhood, we are working very hard. Of course, we have a special representative for the southern neighborhood now, Mr. Colomina. We have he's even my special representative, Secretary General, special representative for the southern neighborhood. And he is doing a fantastic job. And we will open the office in Jordan. Of course, we have the NATO mission in Iraq, which I visited in February, doing marvelous work there to help Iraq develop its security forces and its defense capabilities, also longer term. And of course, we are there on their request, but they highly value our presence and what we are doing. And we have, at this moment, I think in total over 600, and that will probably be that number will grow a little bit over the coming months and years, of our allies being active in Iraq, helping them. But then we are also now working with other countries, with Mauritania, for example. And we had a very good meeting between the ambassadors in the NEC in Brussels, together with the ambassadors from Egypt, Mauritania, Tunisia, others, to really discuss how we can take the next steps when it comes to the southern neighborhood. And why? Because we cannot have China and Russia gaining more and more influence in that part of the world, which is so close to us and therefore vital to our interests. And this is exactly the point your Prime Minister made, the Prime Minister of Spain made, the Prime Minister of Italy made, and others over the last 1.5 and 2 years. And that's why we are really stepping up when it comes to the southern neighborhood, and I'm completely committed.
Thank you. The next questions will be asked by Jesse Clever from the Netherlands, Daria Safai from Belgium, and Joanna Kluzic-Rostowska from Poland. Jesse, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. Good to see you here. Mark, I know you have some troubles with your vision, so we're sitting here. You yourself has been a member of Parliament and head of government for quite a long time. And you've experienced in your own how difficult it can be for politicians to decide on more defense spending. How do you reflect on your time in office, and what have you learned, and what are the lessons you can give to us to be successful in meeting the spending obligation, as I would say, not a spending target, but a spending obligation, than most of us were here, than we were in previous years? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Daria Safai from Belgium.
Thank you so much. As we speak, a European state neighboring the EU is being attacked by rockets and drones provided by the Ayatollah dictatorship in Iran. Russia has been provided with 8,000 Iranian Shahed drones and 200 Iranian Fatah ballistic missiles in their attack on Ukraine. Moreover, servicemen of the Iranian regime are present in Ukraine, training Russian specialists in handling their systems. In case of a future Russian aggression against a European NATO member state, Iran will once again actively support this operation. And last but not least, the Iranian regime is already an active participant in hybrid warfare against our alliance, ranging from sabotage and targeted killings to cyber attack. Hence my questions for you. Will the alliance take this threat seriously? If so, are plans being made to address a possible armed support from Iran to Russian aggression on European ally? Thank you.
Thank you, Daria. Joanna Rostowska, Poland.
Thank you very much. I'm in the middle. Thanks. Now in Poland is debate about how similar or dissimilar will be war between Russia and NATO country compared with war between Russia and Ukraine. We will see what will happen, but I have no doubt that we need some things. Do homework from the Ukrainian exercise, from the Ukrainian front line, the first. Refresh our thinking. I am thinking about the NATO countries, yes. Our thinking about what the war is, how weapon we need, how we cooperate to win the future war. And the next, because we are under hybrid war, I think that we need new thinking about intelligence service, about this kind of role of this intelligence service to do a lot inside the NATO. And my question is new command thinking about it? Thanks.
Very good question. No, first to Jesse Klaver's question, totally spot on. When I became Prime Minister in 2010, and I thought for the European Union it was about the market and the currency, and NATO absolutely clearly why we need it. However, there was also this thinking that the situation with Russia was so much more stable in 2010, 2011, so we could continue getting the peace dividend in, and therefore not increase, even decrease defense spending. For me, the big moment was in 2014, not only Crimea in March, but particularly as we in Holland, in the Netherlands, have all in those days felt was the MH17, and then Russia and all my dealings with Vladimir Putin flatly denying any involvement in Eastern Ukraine, not being present there, he said. So I can't help you, Mark. And I say, well, then I have to accept your view on this, but at least you speak the language, you know the people better than I do. Can you help to get the next of kin back? Because the bereaved ones want to be united with their loved ones. And this for me was was really a moment where I started to realize that the European Union, first of all, is not only about market and currency, but also by working together, 27 countries, being embedded, as the Netherlands, one of the richest countries in the world, but very small, being embedded in such a structure is also providing a form of collective safety, maybe not security, because that's NATO. But the fact that you work together helps to, you're not standing alone. And then, of course, for NATO, the hard defense spending, and luckily over the last 5 years, we were able, also with support of your party and others, to increase defense spending to a more acceptable level. But clearly, it's not nearly enough, and we have to do much more. But that is what we all now have to face, other than 3 or 4 countries who are already there. So I think that's at least my personal journey on this. When it comes to the question from Daria Safai, thank you so much. As I said before, Iran is working together with Russia, with North Korea, with China. These 4 are closely knit. And they help each other, and they all 3 help. So Iran, North Korea, China are helping Russia in the war effort against Ukraine. And clearly the most powerful in that foursome is China. But Iran, exactly as you said, is helping with some key drone technology, the Russians, in the war effort. And that needs to stop. And what the US is doing at the moment, also bilaterally with Iran, to come to hopefully some understanding with that country, I think is important, and I completely support what the American president and his team are doing there. By the way, also with Syria, I think it's good that the deadlock was broken on Syria, that also there now the talks are ongoing, and of course we have to take that step by step, and it will also always because of the type of process we are in, it will not be a fast process, it will be slow, but it has to be done. And then on the question from Joanna Kluzik-Rostkowska, thank you so much for that. First of all, basically two questions. One is, we have to capture all the lessons from Ukraine. And in Poland, we have now JTEC, opened in February by Radmila, the Deputy Secretary General. She was there with the leaders of the Polish Republic, and this is very important because we will capture the lessons from the war in Ukraine. And we know that Ukraine is at an extreme speed innovating. The Russians are trying to keep up with a sort of delay of 2 or 3 weeks. They copy what the Ukrainians are doing, but the Ukrainians are extremely industrious, innovative, and this will give us so many new insights in how war fighting will develop. And I'm not a general, I'm a Secretary General, but I'm not a man in uniform. So obviously it is first of all the military people who will capture the lessons and then also advise us, the politicians, how to best take forward all these insights when it comes to defense procurement, when it comes to reconstituting our own armed forces going forward, taking lessons from Ukraine. And on hybrid, and Poland is of course has to do with it, but all over NATO we are seeing these attacks. And basically, hybrid sounds very cuddly, but it is state-sponsored terrorism. It is. We really have to call it what it is. What happened in 2018 in Salisbury, here, sorry, not here, but in the United Kingdom. What happened with the attack on the National Health Service in the United Kingdom, postal system in Belgium, jamming of commercial airplanes in some of the Baltic republics, but also assassination attempts. We have seen all of that, and we call that hybrid, but of course it is much more. And that is why NATO is now so much more active. And for example, the cutting of critical undersea infrastructure and the fact that this Baltic Sentry was established in only 10 days by Chris Cavoli, our Supreme Allied Commander, after the 25th of December, when that attack took place between Estonia and Finland on this critical infrastructure between those two countries. And what I learned from this is something is an activity. You do not always need consensus by the 32, so that's when I decided on the 5th of January, from now on, we will only have activities and no missions. But this is a joke, of course, otherwise I get into trouble with our ambassadors. But it shows you that we can react fast, and we have to keep on doing that, and not always do exactly back what they do to us, but sometimes also asymmetrical. And the fact that the Russians are now really getting more and more active in the East Sea / Baltic Sea, whatever we call it, but of course it's the same sea, is testimony to the fact that NATO is really getting its act together, of course, with our allies.
Thank you. Now there will come questions from Greece, Turkey and Croatia. We'll start with Dimitrios Kairidis, head of the Greek delegation.
Thank you. Here I am, here, to your left. Yes. My question was partially answered, but only partially, so allow me to insist a little bit. As a parliamentarian, Mr. Secretary General, like everybody else in this room, my first and foremost job is to listen to the voters and to try to respond to their anxiety. So allow me to reiterate a question that has been asked to me time and again by voters and journalists in my home country. And this has to do with the fact that you come from a country that even today does not spend 2% on defense. The Netherlands is an important country. It has a large economy. It counts a lot. It has an economy the size of the 10 smallest economies of NATO, so it's not unimportant. And the fact that there was a shift in your thinking in 2014 makes things a little worse because you remained in office until 2024, way past 2014. So I wonder, for all the forcefulness and persuasiveness of your arguments to increase spending, How do you respond to your critics about that, given the fact that the Netherlands is probably the one country in NATO that can borrow the most easily? It has a very low public debt of 45%, and even after the second invasion of Ukraine, it continues to spend less than 2%.
Mr. President,
my country spends more than 3% despite its problems.
Mr. President,
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
I will now give the floor to Sybiha Selenko.
Sorry, Mr. President. Mr. President, here's Jesse from the Netherlands.
Sorry?
Sorry. Sorry that I'm interrupting, but my country is direct.
Jesse, just one second.
No, something is.
I think that Mr. Rutte will be able to answer that.
Yes, but our country was addressed in a way that was
Thank
false.
you.
The Netherlands is
Jesse,
spending 2%. The Netherlands is spending 2%.
This is not a debate with you, okay? Thank you. Ms. Sybiha Selenko from Turkey, please.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Turkey, an important NATO ally, is at a historic turning point. After decades of conflict, weapons are being laid down, and a new democratic chapter is beginning in the country. This new democratic awakening and the associated opportunity for peace is not only important for Turkey, it also has the potential to bring a positive peace for the entire Middle East, and therefore also for Europe. So my question is, what role can NATO and the NATO PA play in this context to promote and support this peace process? What steps could be taken, and how could greater international support help to ensure to success and long-term impact? Thank you.
Thank you, Sybiha. Now I will give the floor to Dario Hebrak from Croatia.
Here. Mr. Secretary General, in light of commemorating the 30th anniversary of the Dayton peace accords, I would like to ask you now, how can we help today Bosnia and Herzegovina to be effectively set on a sustainable path towards its future NATO and EU membership? The sustainable path, especially in the context of the current situation, where the anti-NATO and anti-EU sentiments fuel the secessionist movement. So my final question, how can we help as an alliance to Bosnia and Herzegovina's path?
Thank you. Thank you so much. First to the question of Dimitrios Karidis. The Netherlands is spending 2% and next year will spend 2.2% in all the NATO calculations. So I'm happy they are there. We are there, I'm there, Netherlands is there, and of course that, and my previous answer still stands, but luckily over the last couple of years we were able to redress that. When it comes to the Turkish question, and I think there are three issues, three opportunities here. First of all, the leadership role Turkey is taking when it comes to Syria. I think that's extremely important. I had long discussions with President Erdogan on this. Secondly, Turkey, when it comes to defense industrial production, you have a huge defense industrial base. And I'm in close contact with the Secretariat of the Turkish defense industry, working closely with the presidency of Turkey. And one of the things I'm really promoting is for NATO to be as open as possible to all the defense industrial companies, because we need everybody. And there is enough money to make sure that all the defense industrial companies within the EU, outside the EU, here in North America and Canada and the US, that they all can flourish. But obviously what we want is more output and not higher prices. You know the joke. The Patriot system will be delivered in 10 years. Is it in the morning or in the afternoon? Why is that important? Because in the afternoon the F-35 will arrive. And this is only the US defense industrial base, but it could make the joke for Rheinmetall, for Leonardo, for some of the defense industrial companies in Turkey, because we really have to force them to put in the extra production lines, the extra shifts, speed up the production, particularly when it comes to ammunition, where Turkey is working closely with some of the ammunition industries here in the US, in Texas, and that means also working on all the issues around our supply chains. And then finally, when it comes to Turkey, fighting terrorism, because your country has had its share of terrorism, but not only Turkey, also other countries, but for Turkey, of course, this has been a big issue, and fighting terrorism is a core task of NATO. And I will always make sure that we will focus, next to our traditional defense, also on fighting terrorism. And then to the question on Bosnia. And here I want to be a bit harsh, because I believe the Troika presidency of Bosnia, and we saw them yesterday at display at the dinner, and I love them all three. I have no friends or enemies in the Troika presidency of Bosnia, but we have to be a bit harsh with them. They cannot export their problems to the rest of the Western Balkans or to the rest of Europe or to NATO. They have to take care of the country themselves. And when some of them have troubles or problems with the fact that there is a high representative or that some of the Dayton agreement is still there, it's not because you and I like that, it is because they do not govern the country themselves. And as soon as they do, we can all step away and say, hey, this is great. Bosnia is now a regular country like the other Western Balkan countries and like everyone in Europe and in Canada and the US. And let's pray for that. And of course, we will help them. You will help. I will help. We will all help. EUFOR is there, KFOR in Kosovo, and EUFOR in Bosnia, and we work together, etc., etc. So we will all be there as guarantors. And we cannot accept any falling apart of the country. That's simply unacceptable to NATO and to anyone. But when it comes to solving this, they have, in the end, to start doing this themselves. And last night, at least, showed that thanks to Dayton, we can have these arguments in peace, but still there are arguments, but they're not fighting each other literally. But now we have to really gently push them to a position where they take collective leadership. And just posturing against the other and then hoping that they will become more popular with their own constituent peoples is not helpful. And that's basically my message when I was in Sarajevo in March. Please start to rule your country and let us step out. I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next questions will come from Estonia, Latvia and Iceland. Raimond Kailujad, please. Where are you, Raimond?
I'm here in the first row.
Oh, you're just right here.
Yes, Mr. Secretary, thank you very much. And you're making an absolutely correct point in talking about the importance of defense spending. What I want to ask you is that we, of course, in Estonia have also studied the capability targets, and we estimate that we need north of 5% to actually meet them. So my question is that, as I understand correctly, you're proposing this 3.5 in hard military spending plus something in, I don't know how to call it, military spending and soft spending on top of it.
Defense related.
Okay, but yes. So to some people that might sound like, you know, we're trying to make the figures look better by cooking the books in a sort of way. But my question is, can you assure this audience that if indeed all the allies spend 3.5%, that these capability targets will be met in a timely fashion and that we are actually able to deter our adversaries the way we need to? Thank you.
Thank you. Raimond Bergaminis, there you are, from Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General. There are more and more voices about the possibility renewal of the NATO-Russia Council. I would be interested to hear your view on this. Is anyone really ready to resume anything in common with aggressor state which, from a position of brute force, has violated and continue to violate the most elementary human rights as well as international law? Do you consider the possibility of such a council being re-established? Do you think that this would not destroy the already unity among the member states of the alliance? Thank you.
Thank you. And now is the time to Dagur Egerston from Iceland.
Thank you, Secretary General, for your good work in extremely complex political seas. I wanted to ask two things. One about the current status of the upgrade of Russia's strategy for NATO, and closely connected to that, if we do need a more comprehensive Arctic strategy, strategy for the High North. We have seen political tensions within the alliance. And my question really is, would a comprehensive process studying the Arctic and the High North with participation of everyone, could that lower the tensions within the alliance and get us behind something and thus stronger?
Thank you. Thank you so much. First on the Estonian question from Raimond Keuliid. Listen, the idea is the following, and I'm not going to get into all the numbers because we have those discussions still ongoing with our allies. But the idea is to have a number on what was currently the 2%, which has to be a new number. As I said before, it will be considerably north of 3%. Because otherwise you cannot reach the capability targets. Our assumption is that with the new number, when we agree on the number, it has to be able to deliver the capability targets, 1, to equalize with the United States, goal number 2, and 3, to do it as rapidly as possible, because of the Russian build-up, the reconstitution of the Russian armed forces, and particularly their stockpiles. And of course there is an absorption capacity issue, because you cannot go from 2% in 1 year to over 3%, whatever the new number is. Why not? Because you need the defense industrial output, you need to hire, you need to do all the other stuff, etc. So there is a sort of max to what you can do each year, so you will reach it in steps. But not like we did in 2014, saying let's have 2% in 2024, and nothing happened till President Trump came on board in 2017. No, here we will have clear incrementals each year, take into account, let's say, all the spending plans your country has to reach that. But overall, we have to prevent that we just ramp up prices by saying all the countries have to go from 2 to, if they are not yet at over 3, to that new number in 1 year. So this will take a couple of years, but that's okay. We have that time. We don't have to reach it in one step. So that's the hard spend. But then there is this issue of military mobility. There is the issue of that our society, as generally, our civilians have to be prepared for what not only a natural disaster but also war might mean. I was in Norway last week. In Norway, but also in Sweden and other countries, Finland, it is totally normal. I think also in Estonia, it's totally normal for the average citizen not in the military to be aware of what it would mean if war breaks out or a natural disaster would hit, and what then your task will be. So that's military mobility. It is making sure that the whole that the civil society is prepared for what might happen, but it's also about building your defense industrial base. Not buying from the defense industrial base, that's the hard spending, but when it comes to defense related, it is also developing the defense industrial base. Ambassadors are currently discussing, or diplomats in Brussels, in various committees, what exactly will be in that category of defense related. We hope to finish that as much as possible before the summit. If we cannot completely get it done before the summit, no problem. But I think these are basically the big ticket issues we have to think of when it comes to defense-related spending. And that will bring you to a new number, and that will make sure that the next 25 years we stay safe. Then there's absolutely no plan for this council to reconvene. That's the simple answer to that. And then when it comes to the question, so that's a question for Raimond Bergmanis and from Dagur Eggertsson from Iceland. I was in Norway last Thursday and close to Narvik, and we had a fantastic visit there together with the Norwegian Prime Minister, Defense Minister, Foreign Minister and the Chief of Defense, and we discussed the Arctic. And the good thing is we have 7 countries in NATO. 7 out of the 8 Arctic countries are in NATO. Of course, Iceland, but also Denmark through Greenland and Sweden and Norway and Finland and Canada and the United States. And these 7 countries are working more and more together and also are discussing with NATO how NATO can get more involved, step by step. For example, when it comes to ISR or other activities. So we're working on that. I expect our ambassadors in Brussels to discuss this probably next week or in the very near future to see how also as NATO we can get helpful when it comes to the Arctic. And we know the sea lanes are opening up. We know China, Russia are more and more present there. We know we have a total lack of icebreaker capacity. So we really have to solve a number of very serious issues. But it was very illuminating to be there and to look at the map of the world, not from the position of Amsterdam or Oslo, but looking at it from the position of the North Pole, and then to see how that whole area is rapidly changing because of climate change, and therefore the impact it has on our collective defense, and therefore how NATO could be helpful getting gradually more involved here, supporting the 7 NATO High North allies.
Thank you. Now we go to North Macedonia, Norway and Ukraine. Dragan Kovački from North Macedonia.
Thank you, Mr. President.
There you are, Dragan.
Mr. Secretary General, building on your morning address, to what extent should NATO enhance its deterrent capabilities and moreover to tailor the resilience building measures in the Western Balkans as a region of strategic importance in order to prevent, deny or to fight with the hybrid threats and to in a way isolate the third-party actors that might intervene, having in mind that bilateral issues are preventing the prosperity of the region, and having said that, may provoke instability in the region and by extension that of Europe by whole. Thank you.
Sverre Myrli.
Thank you so much. It's good to hear you had interesting days in northern Norway last week. As you mentioned in one of your answers some minutes ago, there is an important cooperation between NATO and the European Union in the field of defense and security. A very important cooperation we very much support, even if Norway is not a member of the European Union. Norway has signed an agreement with the European Union to strengthen the defense cooperation, and we are already participating in many other EU initiatives. Many EU members are members of NATO, and many NATO members in Europe are also EU members, but not all. The NATO countries, United Kingdom, Turkey, Iceland, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, and Norway are not members of the European Union. So, how will you ensure these countries will remain closely involved in the emerging cooperation between NATO and EU? Thank you.
Thank you, Sverre. Igor Cherniev from Ukraine.
Dear Secretary General, dear Mr. President, I'm here. Dear colleagues, I can assure you that Ukraine is ready for peace quickly, and we move quickly and constructively toward it. But there are no any signals that Russia is ready even for a ceasefire. Just last night, they launched several hundred of drones and missiles on our civilian cities. They are concentrating thousands of troops near our Sumy and Kharkiv region. Putin was quite clear with his intent to invade in EU region of our country. Is it the preparation for a peace? Definitely not. So it's our shared responsibility to force Moscow to stop. And the key of its ability to wage a war is their economy. We must impose sanctions that will lead to its collapse. Full sanctions on oil and gas, metallurgical and financial sectors. We also need continued military support. First and foremost, air defense systems like Patriots. It can save lives of our civilians. We also need artillery and long-range weapons. We also need strategic investment in Ukraine's defense industry. With additional funds, we can produce faster and more weapon. While we are ready for a ceasefire, we recognize that without a reliable security guarantees, this will only be a pause in these hostilities. So NATO membership is the most effective guarantee and our priority. We also recognize that an international military presence on the territory of Ukraine can also serve as security guarantee as we move towards NATO membership. Ukraine is not fighting for a territory just. We are defending our common principles as freedom, democracy, and justice. And they are not an abstract concepts, but the very foundation of the world order.
Thank you.
Well, just a few seconds, please. We are looking forward to the upcoming NATO summit in The Hague, where Ukraine's rightful place at the negotiation table will be confirmed. Such a signal would be clear and powerful. The alliance is united, and the commitment to Ukraine is unwavering. So, dear Secretary General, can Ukraine count on the invitation to the NATO summit and to the meeting of NATO-Ukraine Council as a signal that Ukraine's path to NATO is irreversible? Thank you.
Thank you, Igor.
Well, thank you so much. I'll take them again in the order. So when it comes to the question from Dragan Kovacsky, yes, we have to enhance our deterrence capabilities generally. What we are doing at the moment in NATO is based on the whole NATO defense planning process, agreeing country by country which capabilities that country needs to deliver to make sure that clicked into the overall NATO system, each country is doing what it needs to do. If there would be an attack towards NATO territory. Of course, there is also the issue of hybrid. You rightly mentioned that. And we also have to make sure that we all understand that, of course, there are 4 countries working together, as I mentioned before, but it doesn't mean that it is limited to those 4 when it comes to destabilizing activities against NATO territory. We should not be naive about that. Then the question of Norway about defense cooperation between Norway and the EU. Very good very good to hear that of course you have that agreement, I think, between Norway and the European Union when it comes to defense cooperation. But the question, of course, is how can we make sure that as NATO and the EU we do the max we can? Well, there is one thing holding us back. That is not the personal relationships. That is not the joint vision, Ursula von der Leyen or Kaja Kallas or Commissioner Kubilius or Antonio Costa or Roberta Metsola or myself and Rad Miller, the Deputy Secretary General in NATO. We all agree basically on the way forward. But let's be honest. Decision-making in the EU is based in many cases on unanimity. Of the 27, decision-making in NATO is in many cases based on decision-making in unity by the 32. And without going into detail, it's not always easy to bring all 32 allies to unanimity, and it is the same case when it comes to the EU. So we are constantly discussing how we can help each other to make sure that NATO is doing stuff which helps the EU to get to 27, and then the EU, what the EU can do to help NATO to bring the decision-making to the level of the 32. It's not, and we agreed, Ursula and myself, that we will never have the fact that sometimes it is difficult to get to unanimity, get into the personal relationships. And if necessary, we will pick up the phone and only hang up when we have found a solution for a particular hiccup when it comes to these 2 unanimity rules, because in many cases you can have workarounds, etc., which are acceptable to all allies and to all member states in the EU. And to give you one example, when it comes to defense industrial cooperation, and the EU is doing a lot there, and I really applaud that, I'm constantly also arguing with our colleagues in the EU, make sure that it is as open as possible. That also companies from the United States and companies from Turkey and Norway and the United Kingdom can tap into this. And of course Iceland and Montenegro and all the countries you mentioned who are not in the EU but are in NATO. And in total these are 9 countries. 23 NATO allies are also in the EU, and there are 9 allies who are not in the EU but still in NATO, that we work as closely together and as one without unnecessary barriers, where I do understand that when the EU is spending European euros on the defence industrial base, that they think it is important to have that euro also come sweating and come to fruition within Europe. But that is possible. We have some very practical cooperation between great industrial companies from the United States, together with companies in Europe, and therefore working together. Take, for example, the Interceptor missile factory in Bavaria, which has been built for Patriot systems and other air defense systems. There's a very practical cooperation which basically makes it possible to really work as boundaryless as possible. I think this is crucial, and we all have to. So it's not because the vision is different or the long-term outlook, but again, these are two democratic organizations, in many cases based on unanimity. And then to Ukraine. You mentioned a couple of things. First of all, developing the Ukrainian defense industrial base. Denmark and Lithuania took the lead here, and other countries are following. Norway, for example, is helping here, but also many others to invest in the defense industrial base in Ukraine. And we know that in some calculations you still have 10 to 15 billion euros spare capacity in the defense industrial base in Ukraine, and that means products for the war against Russia, against Russia's aggression war against Ukraine, but also to develop your own economy, because also there comes a defense dividend from these type of investments, which will help Ukraine. So that's clear. And then when it comes to a long-term peace, be it a ceasefire long-term or a full peace deal, I know that you guys are willing to sit at the table and negotiate. I was very happy that last Friday President Zelensky sent his top team, including the foreign minister and the defense minister, to Istanbul to basically smoke out the Russians and make clear to the rest of the world that the Russians were not serious in those talks in Istanbul, by sending this historian there as the leader of their delegation, who just wanted to go back to where he left off in March 22, when it came to the root causes of the war. And of course this is absolutely not helpful and not bringing us anywhere, but that at least made clear that you guys are willing to play ball, and that is crucial. Because let's agree that thanks to President Trump, the deadlock was broken. He started to engage again with Putin, and I commend him for that, because that is important, because we also need that line of activity and his personal leadership here to get things going. And when it comes to the summit in The Hague, I'm in close contact with President Volodymyr Zelensky on this. We hope to publish the program as soon as it is ready. But of course, I clearly heard the request. We will, by the way, have a NATO-Ukraine Council during next week, Friday, with the defense ministers, during the defense ministers meeting. So this is also ongoing work.
Thank you. We will have now a final set of 4 questions, and then we need to finish our meeting with Mr. Rutte. There will be questions from Serbia, Estonia, United Kingdom and Finland. I will now give the floor to Zoran Dragicki from Serbia.
I'm here, sir. Mr. Secretary General, my question will be about Kosovo and Metohija. Do you plan to increase the number of soldiers in KFOR to protect Serbs from systematic terror by the regime in Pristina? We know very well which situation we have in Kosovo, and we appreciate the role of KFOR, but we believe that KFOR must be stronger in Kosovo to protect Serbs from the terror. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Marko Mikkelsen from Estonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Rutte, I'm strongly supporting your efforts, your tireless efforts to make our transatlantic alliance stronger and more united. These critical times, and as you mentioned, we have to be ready for, to really stand against those threats, existential threats, what we have. But I would argue that the test of resolve of ours is not something which can be envisioned in the future, but actually this is going on daily. Actually, in Ukraine, this is the test ground of our alliance and our resolve, where our leaders, when they say A, they definitely should say also B. I reminded 2 weeks ago, some of our allies made a very strong statement about ceasefire. If ceasefire is not met, there will be consequences. 2 weeks later, we see that Russia has increased aggression. My question to upcoming summit, which is very important also to show our resolve, is that actually to repeat the question what Mr. Cherniev just asked you. What is your position? Should we see during the Hague summit also the NATO-Ukraine Council meeting to be happen, and also can you assure that Mr. Zelensky is invited to the summit? Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Now, Emma Buck from the UK, please.
I'm here. Thank you, President, and thank you, Secretary-General. The Alliance has been slow to respond to growing threats. As we are rapidly scaling up our defence spending, our defence industrial base and civilian resilience to confront these challenges, how do we remain agile to respond to an ever-evolving threat landscape and prepare for not just the coming years, but the next decade and after that?
Thank you, Emma. Now, Jarmo Limel from Finland.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Secretary General. Of course, when we are talking about defense and security, we have to talk about the technology. And as we know, we humans, we are developing technology at the moment in a more radical and faster way that we have never done in humankind history. And as we know, this speed is accelerating. Just think about what has happening in the beginning of this year, for example, in the AI field, quantum technologies or space technologies. And of course, the human mind, psychological warfare is happening all the time, also towards NATO countries. So, Mr. Secretary General, my question is that how you evaluate how well NATO as an alliance is currently keeping up this accelerating technological development. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First to Serbia. Let me start by saying that I don't think it's helpful to keep on using these terms like you said, regime in Pristina. I mean, it doesn't work. I think Serbia is the biggest country in the Western Balkans. We need your leadership in all of this. So please, can I suggest you refrain from that type of rhetoric? And I know you have your issues with Pristina, but let's just phrase it a bit more neutral would be my suggestion. That as a sort of start to my reaction. I have very good contacts with Alexander Vucic, the president. He visited me in March. That was after I was in Sarajevo and in Pristina the week before. And we discussed at length also the role Serbia can play to make sure that we de-escalate the tensions in the Western Balkans. And again, like the United States is the leader in the world, Serbia is by far the biggest country in the Western Balkans. And therefore, we look for you and to you for leadership and being able to do what is possible to de-escalate tensions. We also discussed clearly the accountability questions on what happened in Banjka and other events in 2023. I think that is important. And when it comes to KFOR, it plays a very important role to make sure stability remains in Kosovo, in the region. We will never announce, let's say, the posture of KFOR, whether it will go up or down or whatever. We don't want to make anyone wiser than he is. But you can rest assured that we will do everything as an alliance to make sure that KFOR has what it needs to be of maximum use. But please, again, I also count on Serbia to play a positive role, and I know in many cases you do, but we need to see more of that to de-escalate the tensions in the Western Balkans, but also particularly when it comes to Kosovo and, of course, Bosnia. Then to the Estonian question. Yes, well, listen, before Donald Trump became president, there was no breaking of the deadlock. So let's start by acknowledging that it was him, and I really want to thank him for that, by starting that debate, making sure that we move beyond, of course, continuing giving Ukraine what it needs in intelligence support and military support to stay in the fight and to be in the strongest possible position, but also to break that deadlock with the Russians. And he was the only one who could do that, being the president of our biggest ally, the United States. And then, of course, what we then are saying, oh, but we wanted to go faster. But I mean, he is now president for 3 or 4 months. This war is ongoing now for 3 years. And at the end, we also have to respect, I think, his role in all of this, and that he has to make that calculation when the time comes to take next steps with Ukraine and where necessary against Putin if he is not helpful, etc. But really, I would urge all of us to respect also his role here and the fact that it doesn't work to constantly put pressure on the Americans, saying you need to do this and that, knowing that before the 20th of January there was absolutely no discussion ongoing with the Russians. And again, I am happy that he started that. And as I said about the summit, I clearly hear all the requests. It's up to me to make sure we have a program which is as useful as possible. It will be a very concise summit. It will be much more like London 2019 than Brussels 2018. So really very much focused when it comes to the content debates. But as soon as the program is published, you will see how we will deal with some of these questions. Of course, the United Kingdom, this is really what the summit is about. It is about the money, it's about the defense industrial output, and it is about making sure that Ukraine has what it needs to stay in the fight and to have that long-term commitment to Ukraine. And again, what happened last 48 hours, or 72 hours, 48 hours, last 2 nights, these indiscriminate drone attacks and missile attacks on innocent civilians. I mean, this is not attacking defense bases or airports or whatever. No, these are attacks on cities and innocent civilians going about their lives, losing their loved ones. And I find this terrible. And it shows you that Russia at this moment is absolutely not serious of taking next steps. I think that's what you can conclude from the last 48 hours. So we have to make sure, and that's the third goal for The Hague, that we keep Ukraine strong. And then to finally the Finnish question from Jarmo Linas. I was in Japan 2 months ago, and we discussed the 6th generation fighter jet. It was an interesting debate because we know that the UK and Italy and Japan are working on this. There are other consortia within NATO working on the 6th generation fighter jet, and where already the F-35 is more a platform than only a fighter jet, that will be much more the case for the 6th generation. And there is always this discussion, do you still need the big ticket items like fighter jets and tanks, etc., or can we completely move now in the days of AI and quantum computing to the new technologies? I think, and I'm not a military guy myself, so here I also have to listen very careful to what the advice is coming from our military leaders. But I think the growing consensus is that you need a combination of, yes, the big ticket items, still, also in the future, but clearly working as interconnected as possible and from a design point of view, designed in conjunction, not AI as a layer over it, but really being integral to the whole design of these next generation big ticket items, like the fighter jets and our tanks, etc., etc., and also when it comes to our capabilities at sea. And I think that's the real lesson. And when I spoke last night, before we had our dinner, with the lady who is flying the F-35, which was there on display, I was really impressed. Also from her to learn that she was an F-16 pilot before, now she's flying the F-35. And she said the big difference is that the F-16 was fantastic, but the F-35 is really the next wave. And it's not only flying the plane, it's also making use of all the information coming in from all the various sources, which is F-30, and that's why you have this deep vision into enemy territory, etc. And that will only grow with the 6th generation, with AI coming on board and with quantum computing. So I guess that there is reason to believe that there will be a sort of fusion between the traditional defense industry and these latest technologies. And I think it's crucial that we design them in conjunction and not doing the one first and then have as a sort of, okay, oh yeah, let's now put the AI in, but do it from a design point of view as much hand in hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This last question allows us to conclude with our eyes on the future, which is an interesting thing. Thank you, Mark, for your informative questions. It was nice to have you with us. I think it was the first time you came here as Secretary General. You already have been here as Prime Minister of the Netherlands once, some years ago. I was not here. We hope to see you on our next session. I was reprehended by our Secretary General because on our bilateral meeting I forgot to invite you to the reception we are offering on the 19th of June in our headquarters. It will be a pleasure for us to have you there, just to have a drink and take some photos. Okay, no work, just a drink on the 19th, because we will have the summit in Brussels. It will be a pleasure to have you on the 19th to have a drink with us. Thank you. We'll just let Secretary General to get out, and we'll follow our works. Well, colleagues, thank you very much. It was a very interesting exchange of questions and answers. Almost everybody was able to ask the questions. Some were not allowed to do it because of schedule, but I think everybody can be satisfied with the program. We start now with the draft declaration on taking NATO deterrence and defense to the next level at the Hague Summit, as amended at the Standing Committee here in Dayton. I call Agnes Vadai, Vice President of the Assembly, to present the draft declarations. Agnes, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Thank you, Mr. President. Before I start on the serious stuff, let me have a personal note. I'm really grateful to our President to have this task assigned to me. It was a real good experience for me. Thank you very much for all the delegations who had amendments and helped me to figure out the best way to have these amendments. And of course, I would like to thank our colleagues at the International Secretariat who really worked hard in the past months and also in the past hours to have an amendment which is going to reflect to the summit in Hague. Dear colleagues, in just a few weeks, NATO heads of state will meet in The Hague for an exceptionally important summit. It will provide a crucial opportunity for NATO allies to project unity and resolve. Together, as we know, we must strengthen NATO so that it remains the essential bulwark defending the security of Europe and North America. At this critical juncture, our Assembly has an essential role to play by supporting the difficult decisions that are needed to ensure, one, that we step up to face the challenges of today and tomorrow, and of course that we rebalance the responsibilities within NATO. The declaration puts forward a set of concrete, robust recommendations. Let me mention some. The Hague Summit should reaffirm our shared vision of the strategic environment as laid out in the 2022 strategic concept. It must reaffirm our support for Ukraine because this is where the future European and world order is being decided. Third, we need a fairer transatlantic burden sharing. This is what I call the new transatlantic deterrence initiative. We need a new robust defence investment pledge well beyond 2%. The European Union, we all know, can help, and we must make the best out of the NATO-EU synergy. Fifth, we must urgently develop our industrial base, and we need a rapid adoption action plan to take back the lead in new technologies. And last but not least, we must agree a revised strategy for countering autocrats, hybrid warfare, and we must continue to press for the establishment of a Centre for Democratic Resilience at the headquarters, even if it seems difficult and even if it's sometimes not that pleasant to the leaders of NATO. This is important. Democratic values are important to us, and to help our citizens to defend these democratic values themselves, it's an obligation of all members of Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agnes. Does anyone want to speak in general about the draft declaration? I see no requests of the floor. So, Agnes, would you like to present the amendments that were proposed to the draft declaration?
Yes, thank you, Marcus. There were 7 proposals that were handed in before the deadline, and 3 of them are accepted, 1 is rejected, and for 3 I have counter proposals, but I go one by one. I hope everybody had the documents. I move all the amendments so that it wouldn't be a problem, but I will say my opinion. The first amendment is handed in by Mr. Azubalis and some co-sponsors. Here I have a counter proposal. And my counter proposal will be to reiterate the strategic importance of the Black Sea region for transatlantic security, continued support to allied regional efforts aimed at upholding security, safety, stability and freedom of navigation in the Black Sea region, including as appropriate through the 1936 Montreal Convention, as well as strengthen NATO's posture and regional readiness along the eastern flank from the Black Sea to the Baltic Sea. So this is my counter proposal.
I heard that Mr. Azubalis accepted your counter proposal.
Yes.
So maybe we can vote it immediately, the amendment, unless any of the colleagues. Jesse Clever, please. No? Oh. You're always ahead. You're already voting. So we can vote the amendment as with the counter proposal proposed by Agnes. So all those in favor of the amendment? Thank you. All those against? Abstentions? Okay, the proposal was approved.
Thank you so much. Amendment number 2, Mr. Azubalis and other co-sponsors. I have a counter proposal here, which was agreed by Mr. Azubalis, and that would read, paragraph 18 would read, welcoming allies and NATO's strengthened response to these authoritarian powers' campaign of hybrid operations targeting allies, saluting in particular the prompt launch of Baltic Sentry and establishment of NATO Task Force X to strengthen the protection of critical infrastructure in the Baltic Sea, including against the Russian Shadow Fleet.
I also have the information that Mr. Azubalis accepted your proposal. Does anyone want to speak about the proposal of this amendment number 2? Okay, then we can vote. All those in favor? Thank you. All those against? Abstentions? The proposal was approved. Agnes, please.
Thank you. Amendment number 3 by Mr. Azubalis is accepted by me.
it's amendment number 3, which is adding something to adding self-determination. After the word self-determination, delete remainder and insert including its irreversible path towards full NATO membership on paragraph 4. All those in favor? All those against? Abstentions? The amendment was approved. Agnes, please.
Thank you. Amendment number 4 by the delegation of Serbia, where they would like to remove a certain part. The governing authorities in Republika Srpska are currently playing a negative role in Bosnia-Herzegovina. This part they want to, I have to find a wording, but you have the wording. So they want to remove a certain part that refers to Republika Srpska. This amendment I reject.
Anyone wants to say something about this amendment? Yes, Dragici, please. 1 minute. 1 minute, please.
We have submitted this amendment because we believe that such qualifications do not contribute to the implementation of the Dayton Peace Accord, and it is against our effort to achieve sustainable peace on the Balkans.
Thank you. Do you want to react, Agnes? Or it's...
Yeah, this whole Dayton meeting of ours and of a border meeting is exactly for unity. And we see certain, I would say, actors in the region who are not aiming at unity, rather they want to, for their own personal or for we don't know what kind of interest, but we might guess, tear apart Bosnia-Herzegovina. We don't want that. That's why we want to put here in our resolution that we have to respect the sovereignty, the territorial and the functional integrity of Bosnia-Herzegovina. And we must make a very clear stand for that, because we have seen different events and different actions from certain actors in the region. So this is not against anybody, it's just to make sure that everybody understands this alliance and of course the United States of America, which played a very important role in putting together the Dayton-Paris Peace Accord, has an eye on the region and makes clear we stand for a united Bosnia-Herzegovina.
I agree with the rapporteur. So let's vote the amendment that the rapporteur recommends that we should reject. All those in favor? All those against? Abstentions? Thank you. It was rejected with 1 abstention. Agnes, the next amendment, please.
Thank you very much. The next amendment is number 6, that was presented by the Turkish delegation, which made, and thank you very much, Mr. Çavuşoğlu, and, oh yeah, sorry, 5, okay. I want to be over with it, yeah?
Number 5
Sorry.
for Mr.
Amendment number 5, presented by Mr. Azubalis and co-sponsors. Here we have a counter proposal to have it, let's say, a more precise wording. So our proposal would be to reinforce NATO's posture in the Baltic Sea region, including by strengthening the air policing and Baltic-centric missions towards a credible forward defense posture aligned with NATO's new force model. We had a discussion with Mr. Azubalis before he left, and he agreed to this wording.
Thank you. So can we vote? Okay. All those in favor? All those against? Abstentions? The amendment was approved unanimously. Agnes, now number 6.
Yeah, Amendment 6, and then once again, let me repeat, and thank you very much to the Turkish delegation and the head of Turkish delegation, Mr. Çavuşoğlu. It is to make more precise what we mean by the freedom, safety, security, stability and freedom of navigation, and there is a reference in the amendment to the 1936 Montreal Convention, and I accept this amendment.
Thank you. Can we vote? All those in favor? Thank you. All those against? Abstentions? The amendment was approved unanimously. Now,
Amendment number 7 was presented by the Swedish delegation. What they would like to see in this particular point is to keep up pressure on Russia by backing the ramping up and effective enforcement of sanctions against it and its accomplices, particularly on the oil and gas sector, including the Russian shadow fleet, as well as the banking, the metallurgy, the banking and the financial sectors. So they want to put also metallurgy there, and I accept this amendment.
Thank you. Can we vote? All those in favor? Thank you. Against? Abstentions? The amendment was approved unanimously. We can now, thank you, Agnes. We will now vote on the draft declaration on taking NATO deterrence and defense to the next level at the Hague Summit as amended. All those in favor? Thank you. Against? Abstentions? Thank you. The declaration is adopted unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Agnes. You made a tremendous job. I'm glad you liked it. We will invite you to take care of future declarations that you handle with them so well. Thank you. We now come to the draft declaration on peace through strength in Ukraine. I will ask Sir Alec Shelbrooke to present the declaration. Please, Alec.
Good afternoon. Dear colleagues, the NATO PA has stood with Ukraine from day one of this war. We have condemned in the strongest terms Russia's brutal, illegal and unacceptable aggression and made clear that we will never recognise any of Russia's illegal annexations of Ukrainian territory. We have mobilised diplomatic and military support for Ukraine. We have been ahead of NATO every step of the way in our statements and recommendations. And we have supported our colleagues in the Ukrainian Parliament. We are now at a crossroads. Diplomatic efforts are ongoing to bring this war to an end. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, but not peace at any cost. We need a peace which ensures Russia never attacks Ukraine again. We need a peace which deters Russia from ever testing the limits of Article 5. And we need a peace which makes clear to other autocrats around the world that we will stand up for a world ruled by law, not by force. This is why this declaration is called Peace Through Strength in Ukraine. We must continue to stand firmly with Ukraine, its sovereignty, territorial integrity, right to self-defence and right to self-determination, including NATO membership. We must continue to help Ukraine defend itself, its people and its cities. We must work together, North America, Europe and Ukraine, to bring about the conditions for a just and lasting peace, backed up by solid security guarantees. And we must step up our presence on Russia until it demonstrates a genuine commitment to peace. Last but not least, NATO must play its full part by continuing to support Ukraine through all the tools, programmes and institutions agreed at the Washington summit and at previous summits. And by keeping our door open to Ukraine, because no third party should be allowed to have a veto over our decisions. At this crucial time, our Assembly must send a clear message. We must demonstrate that our Parliament and our people remain firm, steady and united in supporting Ukraine. This is what this declaration proposes to do, and I hope I can count on your support.
Thank you, Alec. Does anyone want to speak on the draft declaration in general? So we can go on the amendments. Do you want to present the amendments, Alec?
Yes. I've been speaking with colleagues and our Italian colleagues about paragraph 7, the First Amendment. Now, I rejected the initial amendment because I felt it was getting too far into making it a NATO operation into Ukraine rather than NATO allies supporting Ukraine. But I feel that we found a compromise, and I propose 2 changes to the text as initially put. I propose that we say, welcoming efforts by the United States in dialogue and consultation with European allies and Canada to bring about a just and lasting peace that provides for Ukraine's and Europe's long-term security, saluting as well efforts initiated by France and the United Kingdom to build a coalition of the willing to provide a reassurance force in support of peace, and convinced that transatlantic unity is essential to achieving, securing and sustainable agreement. So my 2 amendments that I suggest in place of the Italian amendment is to include the word Canada and Canada after European allies, and to change the word efforts led by France and the United Kingdom to efforts initiated by France and the United Kingdom. The reason that I've chosen that particular word is because we are an alliance, we work together, and the initiated coalition of the willing talks should be allowed to allow any other ally join in with full strength, as indeed we hope the willing of the coalition will get to. So, Mr. President, they are my 2 amendments to instead of the Italian amendment. So it'll be up to our Italian colleagues to how they feel about that.
Thank you, Alec. Mr. Cesar just signing me with a thumb up, so he agrees with you, probably. Mr. Cesar, you have the floor.
Lo ringrazio, l'amico.
Yes, I would like to thank my friend Alec. I agree.
Vote the amendment as proposed by Sir Alex Shelbrook. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Abstentions? The amendment was approved unanimously. Amendment number 2, Alec, please.
I propose to accept the amendment in the name of Ukraine.
Very well. I think we can vote, but all those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? The amendment was adopted unanimously. Thank you. Amendment number 3, Alec, please.
So I'd like to put a counter proposal to Amendment 3, which would say, so basically, I mean, I agree with the sentiment. However, we give recommendations to the NATO governments and parliaments, and this is an EU programme. So I suggest moving this up to the introductory part and modifying it as follows. Welcoming all EU initiatives supporting Ukraine, including the new EU Security Action for Europe instrument, which should be employed to the fullest extent in order to accelerate and scale up Ukrainian military production. That's my suggested amendment in place of the original wording.
It seems a wise suggestion. Anyone wants to dispute that? Okay. So we can vote the amendment as suggested by Sir Alex Shelbrook. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? It was adopted unanimously. Thank you. Alec, the last amendment.
Yes, I propose to accept the Italian amendment, the 4th amendment to V.
Great. Can we vote? All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? The amendment was adopted unanimously. Thank you.
One more technical split. Paragraph 15F, in order to highlight the difference, I suppose to split the paragraph. So to maintain and bolster transatlantic unity in the pursuit of peace through strengthening Ukraine. And then the second paragraph, welcome the summit recently hosted by Turkey in Istanbul.
Does anyone opposes to that? Okay, so we can accept that change. Okay, thank you, Alex. Thank you very much. Can we now vote the draft the recommendation on peace through strength in Ukraine as amended? All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? The resolution was adopted unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Halek, for your work. Our next business today concerns the finance of the Assembly. I call the Treasurer of the Assembly, Faik Ostrak, to introduce the financial documents.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleague, as we are approaching to the end of the plenary, I'll try to be as brief as possible on the finances. My duty is to present today for adoption by the Assembly the following documents related to 2024. The two audited financial statements for 2024 and the Treasurer's report on the 2024 surplus. The Standing Committee approved these documents during its meeting in Skopje on 5th of April. We closed the 2024 financial year with a surplus of just over 355,785 euros. Let me emphasize that 110,945 euros came from the interest on term deposits. In addition, savings were made in Chapter 1, personnel costs, where the full salary expenses of 2 staff on long-term sick leave were reimbursed by the health insurance, and where 3 newly recruited staff started later in the year than budgeted for. We also had savings in Chapter 4, missions, seminars, and external relations, which heavily depends on the location and number of activities. The Standing Committee supported and approved to allocate the 2024 surplus in 2 ways. First, 200,000 euros to the provision of Chapter 2, operational cost, and second, 155,785 euros to the provision in support of Ukraine. In 2024, 41,000 euros was used to support Ukraine. Since the creation of the special fund, it has already been used for more than 100,000 euros. And we will continue to support Ukrainian members financially so that they can participate in assembly activities and possibly host a larger event when the situation allows. Finally, let me thank the Swiss Federal Department of Defense, Civil Protection and Sport, as well as NATO for their continuous financial support. I hope that Assembly will adopt these 2024 financial documents. If you have any questions on these, we are more than happy to answer them. That is all from my side.
Thank you, Faik. Thank you, Faik. Does anyone want to speak on this moment? Thank you. So we will now vote on the 3 financial documents. We will vote them together. First, the abridged version of the audited financial statements 2024. Second, the audited financial statements Provident Fund 2024. And third, the Treasurer's report on the allocation of the 2024 surplus and update on the current financial year. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. All those against? Abstentions? The documents were approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you, Faik. Colleagues, we are near to close our session, and on behalf of the Parliamentary Assembly, I want to thank once again to Michael Turner, head of the American delegation, for hosting. Thank you, Mike, for hosting this important and successful session. It took us to a new level of sessions from now on. I also would like to express our gratitude to the United States delegation staff, particularly to Jason Galanes, who was really fundamental on all this meeting, to the International Secretariat, to the police and security staff, to the interpreters, to the state of Ohio, to the city and the people of Dayton, and to all the others who have helped make the session run so smoothly. I would like also to leave a particular word to our Secretary General, Ruxandra Popa, which led the Secretariat of this organization in the last years, in the difficult years of the pandemic, which is now going to choose a new path. She has been remarkable, phenomenal, helping us on the process of transition. Thank you very much for that, Ruxandra. You are a special person and a special Secretary General. And now it is my pleasure to invite Michael Turner, head of the US delegation, to make some closing remarks. Please, Mike.
The most important closing remark I could possibly make: lunch is provided across the street. It is at Courthouse Square. It'll be 5 to us international food trucks. You can either eat it outside, which is a beautiful day, or it is also takeaway because some of you have logistics in your travels. But please make certain you take advantage of the lunch that is provided. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mike. The Assembly will next convene in October for our annual session 2025 in Ljubljana, Slovenia. I declare the spring session closed.
Dear delegates, esteemed colleagues and friends, I am delighted to invite you to the upcoming NATO Parliamentary Assembly annual session, which will take place this October in the heart of Slovenia, Ljubljana. As we make our way up to Ljubljana Castle, one of the city's most iconic landmarks, we are reminded of the strength, stability, and protection it has been symbolizing for centuries. Much like this castle, our alliance is built on solid foundation of security, unity and shared responsibility. The NATO Parliamentary Assembly is a forum of democracy where dialogue meets understanding and where cooperation turns challenges into opportunities. By practicing integrity, working together and staying committed, we can help create a safer and more promising future for all. Ljubljana, known for its openness and constructive dialogue, provides the ideal setting for us to reaffirm our shared values and deepen the bonds that bring us together. I look forward to welcoming you in October as we continue working toward peace, stability, and shared progress. See you in Ljubljana.